Hello everyone, this is Himanshu Gupta, your host for today's workshop from the Mentorship Project. The Mentorship Project is a pro bono initiative which believes in the idea of providing free access to quality mentorship to law students and professionals across the country. In doing that, we have recently conducted sessions with young achievers from legal background, working in various fields, including civil services, public sector units, litigation, management, law firms, at all. In conjunction to that, we have also provided mentorship to students who prepared for Coal India Legal Officer Examination, IBPS Law Officer Examination, MP Judicial Examination. With the efforts of all, we have started getting positive results in these examinations, where our mentees have qualified these examinations with the flying colors. In the same series, today we are conducting a workshop on the topic how to write and publish an academic paper in various national and international journals. As we all know that being a law student, research skills become very important for us because it not only teaches us law, but also helps us in building good drafting and research skills. We understand that a large number of students in law schools lack quality guidance on publishing articles, research papers, blogs, etc. on relevant issues. In order to bridge this gap, we bring to you a mentorship session on how to ace publications in law school by our expert mentors who have excelled at publications both at national and international level. In today's session, our major focus is on the sine, where we have invited two legal personalities who have a great experience of writing good research papers and publish them in national and international journals. So we have Mr. Sushmit M, who is an associate at Khaitan Co, and Mr. Yasaschandra Devarakonda, who is working for Saraf and Partners. Both of them have worked really hard in their college days to learn the skill of writing good research papers. So we express our heartfelt gratitude to them for accepting our invitation and agreeing to provide mentorship to the students. And before starting this session, I wish to lay down the structure in which we want to conduct the session. Initially, our distinguished guests will share their knowledge and experience of writing and publishing a research paper. Thereafter, I will open the floor for questions from participants in this workshop where they can jot down their questions on the chat box, and I will be asking those questions one by one from our panel. However, at the same time, as our guests have agreed to that, so the participants can raise their questions and the guests will answer their questions. So we can also go for that. But at the same time, we request everyone to maintain the decorum and let's make this session a success for all of us. So now I open the floor for our guests to start speaking on the themes that they have in their minds. So over to you, sirs.
Thank you, Himanshu. Welcome, everybody. I'm Yashaschandra. A bit of introduction about myself. I have graduated from National Law University Odisha in 2022. I'm currently in Delhi working at a law firm called Saraf and Partners as an associate in their litigation and arbitration team. And yeah, huge thanks to this mentorship project. Seems to be a very useful guidance tool to students. Hopefully, the next 1 hour would be enlightening for you as much as it would be for us to learn from you about how it is at law school with respect to opportunities, etc., etc. We'll get there.
Thank you for that very warm introduction, Himanshu. I mean, I think both of us are very happy to be here today. I'm DVS's batchmate from NLUO, so broadly, whatever he's talked about himself also applies to me, except that I work in the banking and finance team in Khaitan Co. Thank you all for coming on a weekend. I mean, that's probably a thing that we're telling ourselves as well. I think DVS would relate. But again,
Yeah.
that we so I mean, the first thing that struck me about this particular session is that how you've titled it as how to ace publications in law school. So I don't know if we can tell you how to ace publications, but we'll tell you about certain things that worked for us, because publications is not like a one formula fits all thing. Some things that have worked might work for you. Some of you might already have built up processes which are already working great for you. In that case, you can take our advice as mere feedback and see if you can incorporate that if required. Yeah.
So what is a research paper? Like, what do we mean by it? And why should one publish it when they are there in the law college? So how is it useful?
Sort of answer the question very broadly. What research paper entails is effectively, as at an individual level, you sort of read and understand the law as is, and you think about what it can be, how it ought to be, and therefore sort of try to reach that particular position where in your mind you feel that oh, this is incorrect. This has to be, say, A has to be in a certain manner, and therefore there has to be a change in the law, or there has to be steps that have to be taken, so on and so forth. So to put it simply, it's sort of in a way putting mind to applying your mind to what you learn in your law school, while at the same time sort of going beyond the textbook or beyond what you're taught in law school, where you sort of where you're only, say, have a module or have a course and there's point A to point B. But research papers or publications or the entire idea of academic discourse is to sort of go beyond it, where everybody has the liberty to think about various aspects of legislation. And of course, at an individual level, it will vary, and therefore the beauty about publications.
Right.
I think I can put it that way. And Sushmit, if he would want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, since you say publications, I think publications has a lot of things to it. I mean, research papers are only one subset to it, which I think TVS has summarized on. You can have, and I think that broadly corresponds to the long form articles that we write on certain topics. You can also write for a blog. You could write a case note. You can also, so there are various types to go about it. There's no one way you should do it. But of course, unless you try out all the different ways to, express yourself, you will not really know which thing suits you. Again, academic writing is something which is, very audience specific. So when you're writing for a blog, that's a different audience. When you're writing in an academic journal, that's a different audience. So you'll accordingly have to temper your research into a way that is presentable and appropriate for that forum, I think. That would be my...
Right. But what are your learnings from it? So let's start from the incentive of writing a research paper, how it helped you, and what did you learn from it? So that then we can move on why we should go about it. Why should we write and how should we write it? So initially, just the incentive that you got out of writing the research papers.
Right.
So I think as law students, one thing we should internalize is that writing and reading, more importantly than writing, is what we've chosen as our bread and butter, right? So there's essentially no two ways about it. It is about the more you read and the more you write, the more you sort of enhance your knowledge and you develop skill set which will take you to a position you want to be in your career and in your life. So the incentive, as simple to put very simply, is not that you'll have a list of 10-15 publications on your CV which will get you a better internship or a better job, or that you will get a prize money if you write an article for a particular competition, so on and so forth. I think the most important incentive at an individual level, anybody who picks up a pen or in most cases is a laptop and a Word document, is to sort of understand the importance of writing and reading. That's to me, it worked for me. That's what worked for me, where I kept reading a lot of articles, blogs, anything that came up on my phone at any point in time, wherever I am in college, right? So that sort of helps you develop a habit of reading and of course subsequently writing, which is, I think, quintessential for a career in law.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Devarakonda. But my question for Sushmit now. So he talked about how reading is very essential, but then you have to bring that reading into writing, and for that you need to decide a topic. So how did you decide the topic, and how should one decide a topic when one has to write the paper? So
now that I have that background in mind, I think how I started off on my publication journey was the fact that I noticed that we were already producing so much content in university. I don't think if I should call it content, but yeah, I think we're already producing a lot of writing through our projects. I'm sure that's something all students in law school notice, right? Because every year you have 6 new subjects and you have to turn in different forms of research projects for all of them. So I noticed that if I'm already putting in the effort to make making a passable project, why not, put in a little more effort, do a little higher, research, and then kind of elevate it to a place that you can put it out on a public forum where others can benefit from reading it. The second thing I noticed is that I'm sure that happens in a lot of universities, is that before you submit a project, you usually have a one-to-one with the professor where you can, ask him about your synopsis. I think that's what most of us call it, where you basically write a synopsis detailing what you want to cover in your project, and you discuss that with the professor. So again, that is one forum I really found helpful, because I spoke to my professors. I told them that this is something that I have in mind. I intend to publish this subsequently and not just think of it as a project. So again, they offered a lot of inputs, and I think that was a great building block from where I began. Subsequently, I think it moved on to interest areas, because it's very difficult to develop interest areas right when you start law school. So my advice would be to definitely look at your projects a little more closely, not just look at them as something you need to tick off your list, but also kind of consider how you can push that into the publication space. And once you've started this process, you will find yourself being more observant to what's happening around you in terms of what DVS said. There's a ton of legal, if you open Barn Bench, there are 100 updates there every day. The RBI is publishing new regulations, and the MCA has a great website now where you can find a lot of important information. So again, I mean, then I think what becomes useful is to slowly gravitate towards a form of writing that you would prefer. I personally prefer short form writing, because there you can be concise and you can quickly talk about a development that has happened, and then you can probably talk about what could have been different or what has been done right. Again, long form articles will need you to introspect a lot more, do a bit of jurisdictional research, look into other jurisdictions, and of course there's an entire process to it. But again, another way I think we law students can start off on our publication journey is via mooting. I think DVS will have something to add to it later. But I think if you're already doing so much of research for a moot proposition, I think it's completely doable to convert that into a research article, of course, in a different format. So again, these are two things I think you can consider as places to kickstart your writing journey, your projects and your moots. DVS, anything from your end?
This is something, of course, nothing against having numerous publications on your CV or on your LinkedIn, but often where we find ourselves, and I think this is something for me personally later on in my law school I'd struggled with as well, where you sort of don't get carried away by the writing, where you reach a point where you realize that all that you're doing essentially in your 1,000 words or 1,500 words of article or blog is effectively repeating what's already there, or repeating the jurisprudence, giving it a background, giving it an introduction, repeating what the jurisprudence says, and then sort of coming to a conclusion. That sort of doesn't help you. And even if there are websites or there are places where you can get it published, it sort of doesn't add as much value as much as what a well thought out article would add, even if it is something even if it is 1,000 words or even if it's 10,000 words, it really doesn't matter. As much as it's a well thought out original idea that you have chanced upon, where you sort of translate that into a writing instead of sort of focusing on the already existing jurisprudence, the case law, or even if it's foreign jurisprudence. You look at US, you look at UK, you look at India, and sort of say, oh, this is my conclusion. Really not that helpful, at least in terms of value addition, in my opinion. So I think that's something we have to be wary about. And from the very beginning itself, you sort of have to have that sort of approach to how you have to go about publishing various articles. You don't sort of have this peer pressure with a peer pressure that I have to publish it because my friends are publishing it, or somebody or a session such as this that you attended sort of said that you have to publish in law school. It's really not important. Sort of again, going back to my point about reading, where you read all of these articles, you'll sort of understand this very point that I'm trying to say about how really experienced people sort of go about publishing content on really reputed journals. And going back to the point about, I think I'm a little ahead of myself, but this is important at this juncture, where you sort of, even if you logically think about what happens to an article that you write after you finish writing it, is that a really reputed journal will probably not take you because of the mere fact that you don't have enough experience. I've seen this I've experienced this firsthand, where you sort of don't get selected for a publication because of the fact that you don't have enough experience. So sort of adding to the point that I'm trying to make, which is that it's really not that big a deal. You're not really missing out on anything if you don't publish any article at all. But having said that, the benefits of which there are merits to it as well. And which is why I think, especially for someone who's just joined law school or who's in their first or second year, it's important to begin by taking these small steps like I was talking about, where there are these competitions which sort of are a helping hand for you guys to go about saying, even with respect to choosing a topic, where you sort of have a set of guidelines and you can sort of go about it. But of course, there are other, I think, talking about moots. I found it very helpful. I had, I think of more than a couple of mine came from the moots that I've done. So if you are, I think, like Sushmit was saying, if you are spending 3-4 months of research on a particular proposition, you'll realize that it's pretty easy for you to convert that into a publication as well, because the moots that most moots in the country, national and international, sort of have that they have an advanced level of understanding of jurisprudence, where they ask you a question which becomes relevant to you 10-20 years later. Like there are moots which sort of pose questions in law, which if you look at it from 10 years ahead, from a perspective which is 10 years ahead, it sort of makes sense. So just to point out the fact that publications sort of are not on the existing jurisprudence that a judgment is set into, that judgment, or that there is a development in law, but more than that, it's more about what ought to be the case, what should be the law in the future, what has to be the law with the evolving times that we're in right now. So these are the sort of I think at least from a perspective level, if these things are in your mind, it'll sort of help you guys channelize your thoughts into words, and then you can convert them into applications.
Right. So I think we've spent considerable time talking about why research papers, and I think we can slowly gravitate towards how, because that's also important for a lot of us, because often we have a lot of ideas in mind, but we don't know how to kind of put them into paper, or how to articulate that, or what's the So again, I think there there are 2 ways to go about it. First is that you develop your conclusion in terms of where you want to reach, and then slowly backtrack yourself in terms of research to back up that conclusion. That why do you think, if you decide on, say, ABC is correct, of course you can't decide on the back of your mind. Say you've done some preliminary reading, you've developed a basic understanding of what's happening, and you have some idea of what could be your conclusion in terms of, say, if a new amendment has come in and you've read upon the amendment, you've read upon the background of how things were before this came in, and you have some idea about certain loopholes that could be possible in this new amendment. Then you start to research and see that whether your conclusions can actually fit in, because a lot of times we are not aware of certain decisions or cases or judgments that might have a completely different take on things. Because in India, unfortunately, a lot of our law is judge-made law or regulatory law, and a lot of things that are mentioned in the statute have to be read in consonance with that. So often just reading the bare text of the new amendment or the bare text of a legislation won't help you in terms of how to picture yourself. The other way to go about it is to spend quality time and developing a synopsis or a hypothesis where you basically try to structure your current readings, what you already have read and what you currently know about the topic, and then slowly try to gravitate towards the conclusion in terms of where you want to take your research towards. Because often we read up so much that our thoughts kind of mimic whatever the research paper that we are relying on. Our thoughts kind of start becoming identical to that. So then what you will end up doing is that you will write a identical paper which doesn't really add much value to the entire academic space. Because it's a inherent thing for us that, okay, this guy has made a great point in his article, let me incorporate that into my writing. But there the trick is to put that in a way that you offer enough credit to the previous person and not make it sound as if it's an original idea from your side. Although it's tempting at times, I think I've done it. And then I've been told by whoever's reviewing my manuscript that this has already been spoken by someone, so you can't kind of credit it to yourself. So that's one thing. The second thing is you should if I go back to where I started, if you are developing it from a research project, you sit with your professor and try to discuss it with him and see how the final product should look like. If you are trying to publish from a moot, you sit with your coach. Most of us, I think, we speak to a lot of coaches and mentors when we go through our entire moot process. So once the moot is over, you can definitely reach out to them and see if they can offer you insight in terms of, again, don't blank text them, ki help us write a paper. You have to prepare a first draft and send it across and see what their thoughts are. The second thing is, of course, I have found myself performing better when I have a co-author. Some people might like working solo. So having a co-author helps in terms of you can really brainstorm with this other person. And then I think in general that allows you to add a lot more depth to your research. And that's broadly what I think of.
Brainstorming, a brainstorming exercise, even if you're not co-authoring with somebody, even if it's a friend with whom you're having a normal conversation, you can sort of bring up a topic and say that, oh, what do you think about it? Because it sort of helps you come up with ideas that you normally would not have would not have chanced upon by yourself. And therefore, I think brainstorming with somebody helps, and especially if you're starting out in your law school, it sort of helps to have two people where you sort of learn through the process, and then perhaps you can diverge into taking up individual projects and also co-author with someone else. But the one thing which I would say is sort of important to me, this is something which is the deal breaker, right? Because in I think each and every publication of mine, or project of mine, or anything that I've taken up, what sort of really helped me is being the devil's advocate, in the sense that you sort of question what's in front of you, even if it would be the most ridiculous thing that you could probably come up with. It doesn't matter. The perspective, I think, the approach to how you can, after you choose a topic, is to question why it is the way it is, and then think about, or then brainstorm about what can be done. Because you will not reach a point of what can be done until you question the status quo. That's my strongest belief. Until you sort of question why it is the way it is, even if it is the most ridiculous thing that you could probably think of, it really doesn't matter, right? Because you can always come up with you never know how you can chance upon an idea which can help you in your publication or in the article that you write. Again, like I said, in my belief, if it's not something innovative, if it's not an original idea, if it's not something that is challenging status quo, or if it's a mere repetition of the jurisprudence that's there, even if it's nationally, or even if you take international jurisprudence and come and say that India has to do this, it sort of really it sort of is not a value addition, right? Even if it's UK or even if it's US jurisprudence, you sort of want to bring it to India, and then you then sort of have to think about, for instance, it probably is a very small example, sort of have to think about how those laws can apply in Indian context, and therefore what's best for this country, so something like that. The point being that you sort of have to question throughout your exercise, even as you draft, as you write, question the idea of what is, and you will sort of end up at a place where you will know what ought to be. So that sort of is something I think I would put it as the most important thing. Coming up with a conclusion up ahead, saying that this has to be the case, and then you sort of track back to saying, oh, this is status quo, how do you reach there? That's one thing. And the other is it often happens to many. It happened to me in one occasion where, as I was thinking about a topic and writing about it, I had no idea where I was headed, right? And I think in amidst all the research I'd done, and amidst every idea that I had in my head, I sort of lost track of where I was headed. And interestingly, I ended up at a place which had, I ended up in a position where I hadn't even thought about that particular conclusion at the time that I was thinking about the topic, or at the time that I've started writing. So much so that I had to sort of go back to my introduction and change my entire introduction to sort of match with what I ended up concluding. So, it's therefore, I think, a really beautiful journey for me, at least any publication journey, where you chance upon an idea or a topic and you end up writing an entirely original piece of yourself. It often is the case that you will know where you're headed. You will know that this ought to be the conclusion, but it can happen that you sort of lose your way and you try to find it back and you end up somewhere else, and that could be even better than what you thought at the first instance. So through your journey, I think it's important that you should sort of be flexible with respect to how you can chance upon ideas that can help you write any particular article you want to write.
So I think, again, to break this up into a small timeline, I think the first thing is what we spoke about in the first section, which is you go through all these portals. There's Loctopus, there's Live Law, there's a lot of places where call for applications are published. So you go there, you see what different journals are asking for your submissions. You see the different types of submissions that they want. It's the first step. The second step is what we talked about right now, is where you formulate an idea, where once you've decided on where you want to publish your article, you start working towards formulating the actual content of the article. The next step, again, is, I think logically, is that no amount of thoughts are sufficient if your submission doesn't go there in time. So the third thing that you should probably look at is deadlines, right? Every submission, of course, there are two ways to do this. A lot of publications offer rolling submission where there is no strict deadline per se, but in case you submit after a particular date, you will be considered for the next edition of the journal. In other forms of or other platforms, there is a strict deadline which you have to follow. So the third thing that you have to do is to basically work back from that deadline. You have to at least 2 to 3 days before the deadline, you should have the final draft ready. 4 to 5 days before that, you should have your first draft ready. And then a couple of days before that is where you should have your synopsis or conclusion, or whatever your starting point is based on your approach, that ready. So that is something that you should have. Of course, these are not hard and fast rules, but deadlines are very, very important, because ultimately, if you don't produce, no matter what you've thought, no matter you might have the best idea in the world, unless you're able to attach that file in that email and send it out at the right time, it doesn't matter. I think that's very important. The fourth thing that once you have your deadlines, timeline in mind, the next thing that you should work on is you should read the guidelines of a particular platform very, very closely. It might have certain formatting guidelines that you must look into. There might be a specific font size. There might be you might think these things are, not so important in the bigger of things, because a lot of things we get so carried away in our thought process or our research process that we think these are things that can be brushed off till the last moment. But I think it's very, very important to be mindful of the submission guidelines. So often the submission guidelines will mention the broader topic areas. So then you have to ensure that your article stays within that area, because if you stray too far away from the theme of the publication, you might not be considered. Another important thing is probably footnotes, right? I think that's the single most important skill that we acquired through our law school in terms of publications, because it's useful in your projects, it's useful in publications, it's useful in your moots, and it'll also be useful when some of you start your journey and you'll be producing professional memorandums and legal opinions. There you have to cite your sources. So of course, again, Oscola and Blue Book are the two most widely used formats. There's also one Indian footnoting standard, which I'm forgetting the name of, but I think it's SILF or something, but that's not so widely used. But Oscola and Blue Book is something that you should really invest some time in. I think a lot of law schools do give you an idea in your legal methods classes, but of course that's not really enough. You will have to look into the actual manual and see how. So spending some time working with footnotes is important before you actually venture in your publication journey, something that I feel. And then so you have your platform ready, you have your thoughts ready, okay, a little bit of, I think, discussion is required on where do you research from. I think this is not, there is no hard and fast rule to it, but again, if you are citing from a place, it has to be something that's legitimate, or citing from blogs, etc., usually not considered enough in a academic sense of things. So of course, Google Scholar is something that I use a lot. So that could be a great starting point, because if you type in your queries there, you'll find a lot of research articles there, and then those articles could be in different platforms. Some could be in Khaitan Online, some could be in Manupatra, some could be in a different platform. So again, Google Scholar is basically, it'll aggregate a lot of important data for you, but it's up to you to go to each individual hit and see whether or not that is actually useful to you. Here, of course, your law school will obviously have subscriptions to a lot of these things, so that should come in handy, because of course it's totally understandable that a lot of quality content, unfortunately, is still paywalled in our world. So there's no way to go about that. I mean, I've heard that in case if you write to authors and ask for their content, and and if you make a case for yourself, they do share scripts, but again, that usually takes a lot of time, which might not be feasible if you're working on a tight deadline. So having your databases ready is, I think, an important bit. So this is important. And then you have your timelines, and finally you get it reviewed by whoever's overlooking your thing, and then submission happens. I think that's broadly the timeline I can think of. Yeah.
It can get really stressful, I feel, especially when you're starting out, to meet a particular deadline in the chase for which you will sort of miss out on the bigger picture that you want to draw, that you want to make in your article. So it's important that you try to avoid that kind of a situation, because then the real point about you trying to publish something is lost. So and especially if you're caught in a situation where you sort of don't know what the next step is, I found it helpful that you take a break for even a day or two even, and you don't think about it, and somehow magically while you're taking a walk or during shower, you come up with an idea which you think is helpful for you in your article. So with specific regards to timeline, of course, a timeline is a timeline, and I mean, a deadline is a deadline. And if there is one for an essay or for a competition, then you ought to meet it. And I think you sort of have to plan ahead and not commit to something which is, say, which has to be submitted 1 week from now, but something which, say, is a month or two ahead, and you can sort of go about beginning your journey. All of these are, to be very honest with you all, are variables which will change. It's pretty subject to the then, college schedule. It's subject to the length of the article. Even if, for example, you have to come up with a 10,000 word article, it's not going to happen in a week, right? So there are a lot of variables. But I think the point that I want to highlight is that if you are stuck on something and you're not able to sort of come out of a loop, or you're looking for a new idea, it's best to not think about it for a while. It sort of helped me as well in a couple of instances. And with respect to the type of submissions, I think, and the scope, in fact, of your publication, one thing that I think Sushmit was also pointing out was how you have to, say, come up with a synopsis first, or what a few journals would like to call as an abstract. So a few journals you will see will have an abstract submission first, and there is an abstract selection. So you submit an abstract, you present an idea to the editors or to the authors of the journal, and if they like your idea, they accept the abstract, and then you go about writing the entire article based on the abstract within the confines of the scope of your article that you had defined for yourself in the abstract. So those are also one type, and those are instances where I think deadlines or timelines really matter, because in those cases the timeline is really not in your hands. Like, if you have an abstract submission, the editors themselves will get in touch with you and say that, look, we need your first draft by this, we'll give you comments by so and so date, you'll have to give us the revised by so and so time. So that's sort of a more complicated exercise to be a part of. But just that you're aware of such kind of submissions as well at any level, where there is an abstract submission to begin with, and then subsequently you get selected, your abstract gets selected, and then you go about publishing. So yeah, I think with respect to research, I think you've covered most of the points. And again, these are all a function of your specific sort of the access to which you have. There is, however, there is one pretty useful tool that I've come across in my college, which is a Sci-Hub. I don't know if a lot of you all know this, but it almost seems like a cheat website where a lot of articles that normally are paywalled or normally are subject to subscription can sort of be accessed through this something called Sci-Hub, SCIHUB. If you Google it, I think you'll come across it. So that, I think, for me, that was more helpful than any other database that was out there, because of the mere fact that, of course, any article or any research paper that you want to read, which you think you can help your case, it sort of is. The website sort of breaks the wall for you and gives it to you. And writing to existing authors, this actually works. I didn't believe it when somebody suggested this to me, but from firsthand, believe me, I've written to an author, and she's been really pleasant with the request, and she's shared the article with me that she's written. So I think as an academician, once you're into this entire, at least sort of people you will get in touch with, right? The sort of people who have like already had so much years of experience and so many publications to their name, they'll sort of understand the limitations that you have, and they'll sort of help you with access to something which you think is helpful. So don't, that I would think is also a pretty useful tool. Don't miss out on something like that. If you do find yourself to have the lack of resources. But yeah, I think broadly that's about it from my end. with respect to how you can from point A reach point B. And yeah, it's a very lengthy process, to be fair. I mean, personally, in my law school journey, I hadn't even thought about publications in my second and third year of law school. Like my the 2 years of I didn't really think about. I didn't even worry about, oh, I don't have any publications and all that. They'll come to you. It can happen at any day. It can happen at any point in time. So don't really push yourselves to say that, oh, I have to have a publication once a year or once a semester. All these are really, they're not something which is going to help you. But the one thing that you have to do, and at the cost of repetition, is that you have to read. There is really no cheat to reading as much as you can, especially if you like an area of law. If you have 6 subjects in your college, and if you've liked one of them, and it makes complete sense to Google stuff. And Google really is the best sort of research tool that you can have. Yeah, so don't focus most on reading. Is I think what I would ask, what I would suggest you all take away. And yeah, writing an idea, it'll on you. Like I said, especially for people who are starting off, competitions are the easiest tool to go about publishing. But there's also a red flag which I had just thought of, which is that there are a lot of publications which ask, a lot of publication houses which ask you to pay for a publication, which, in my opinion, of course, it's of course a function of the circumstances, the variable, right? But in my opinion, is not legit, because I don't think that it makes sense that you'll have to pay 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 for you to publish, because it again, going back to the point of adding value to the jurisprudence that is out there, right? So it sort of doesn't, because anybody with 1,000 rupees in their pocket can write anything. But of course, that's my personal opinion. You can take it as such. Just be wary of these things, because especially for someone who's starting out, you can sort of fall into a trap where you come across websites which say that you have to pay if you have to get it published, and then you sort of ask yourself the question: then anybody with that X rupees can publish, so what's my value that I'm adding? And also understand, I think I'd missed out on this, but as I was saying, at a very academic level where publications of research papers happens, there is an entire like publication of a research paper is a very serious affair. Like, I don't know if in your own law schools, if you may come across this, but there are these debates that happen through publications. Like, if Sushmit and I are 2 authors, for instance, say I write an article for a particular journal, which Sushmit say doesn't agree to it, and then he writes an article effectively in response to what I've written, and then I sort of counter. There was this one jurisprudence lecture where I'm forgetting the name. I don't know, Sushmit, if you can recall. There were these debates that we were taught about.
The Hart-Fuller debates, right?
Yeah, the Hart-Fuller debates, yes. So, say Hart and Fuller were 2 scholars. This was something which we had taught. It's published in the Harvard Law Review. So there's an article written by Hart, and then there's an article written, and in response to which there's an article written by Fuller. And then Hart writes another article in response to it. And this entire sort of back and forth are articles or publications, as we are talking about. So you have to understand the seriousness with which, of course, at a very super high level, these things are taken. And therefore, sort of try to, at your own level, even for me, sort of wherever we are, add value to the jurisprudence that's there already. So I think with that intention and motive, if you go about it, no publication is small or big. Everything is adding value to what's out there in the academic space.
I think just 2 quick points before we move on to, I think, Q&A. Thank you. They've already been such patient listeners, think that's helpful.
Yeah.
So just quick point before we open up for Q&A. One thing is probably how do you decide on a platform, right? So I think DVS told you about certain problems in terms of selecting places. Some places do ask for money. So I think an easy way to look at this is to, if you're looking at short form content, which is blogs, a good place to start off with would be the blogs that are run by different committees in law schools. You might have come across, for example, NLIU Bhopal runs the CBCL blog. I think NLUJ also has one. So a lot of college, I think that's a very legit place to start off with, because that way you will have some form of legitimacy as well in terms of the platform where you're publishing on. So look out for blogs which are run by student committees, And the second thing is, if you're looking into a longer form of content, a good place again is to start off with the student law journals of a particular university. And most of our universities have a student law journal. Again, a good idea also, now that I think about it, is to join the editorial boards of these particular student law journals, because that also offers you good insight into what others are writing on, how they're writing on, how they're putting their thoughts across. So I think the editorial board will be a good place to, explore a lot of things. Then once you are comfortable with the student law journals, all universities also have a regular law journal, which are primarily meant for academics, but they also accept limited submissions from students. So again, once you are once you have, so that's again a little advanced, but I think once you are done with student run blogs and student law journals, I think you can slowly graduate to that. And then again, the next logical step forward would be international publications, which are run by dedicated societies, communities, etc. Also universities abroad, again, they also run different papers, so you can look into that. And so this is basically, I think this should help you. There are also certain industry run blogs, for example, the Indian Review of Commercial Law, I think Corporate and Commercial Laws, IRCCL, that's a great blog to write in. There's also India Corp Law, which is run by Professor Varotil and his team. That's again a great place. So these are industry run blogs in addition to the student run and in university run things that I talked about. And lastly, I think the real ball game becomes word limit, because blogs expect 1,000 to 1,500 words. Short form articles expect 3,000 to 6,000 words, and long form articles expect beyond that. There's often 10. It can go as far as up to 10,000 words at times as well. So again, there comes the strategy bit of things. So when you are thinking about your topic, blogs, so when you're writing, say, 1,000 or 1,500 words, you have to be very, very specific. So that will usually cover just a small summary of what has happened and your take on it, and not much else. There'll not be a lot of emphasis on citing as such, because most blogs have moved into web portals where you will be expected to hyperlink the article itself with the links of your sources. So blog writing, it's not really about citations. You have to have some sources, and you have to basically tag those websites as hyperlinks into the text of your article itself. For short and long form articles, I think the ball game becomes into how much. So again, say short form articles will have your take on it, what's happened, but it'll also have a little bit of what is the industry standard. So that'll not happen in a very small blog, because there's simply no space to write about it. And when you're moving to the 10,000 words ballpark figure, there you have to look at lacunae, or say you look at laws from another jurisdictions. All of these things kind of add up, and you ultimately have your final article. So again, the word limit is something that you should be mindful of from day one, so that you can structure your things. Other than blogs, long form articles and short form articles, there are, I think, case notes and book reviews, which are two other forms of content that I can think of. Case comments, of course, as the name suggests, are, you have to offer your take on a particular judgment, which is not just writing the facts in your own words, but you'll also have to, offer insight into how this really changes things. And other book reviews, of course, again, they are a different form of writing where you have to basically offer your insights on a published book, etc. Another thing that usually comes up is, I think, call for presentations, right? DVS, I think that's something.
I think we have a question on paper presentations as well. Yeah, paper presentations, they are a form. I think that happens a little later. Like that sort of happens after you. To be fair, no, I have been to a presentation where there was an abstract, and then it sort of straight away was a presentation, and subsequent to which was an article which we've written and then published. So paper presentations, to be fair, can sort of take various forms. There could be a conference based on which is on a particular idea, and then you'll sort of say come up with an abstract which will help you, which will help your whatever it is that your idea is, right? And then right after the abstract submission, or say abstract selection, will be the paper presentation. Sort of, it'll be a little challenging to come up with, say, a PPT or any form that may be prescribed for presentation of your paper or your idea of the paper, and then which later translates to a publication, which becomes a journal or a book or a chapter in a book. That's sort of format that paper presentations normally. So again, I think the idea is, or I think the point about an exercise such as a paper presentation is that the authors who come and speak at paper presentations and come and speak at conferences talk about their ideas, and they take away from the conference ideas which they can incorporate in their work, which will later on become a book or a journal. So yeah, that's I think it's normally how it works. So of course, it will be a function of who's the organizing committee and what the organizers want. Is there an editorial board, or who are the editors for the book, or who are the organizers of the conference? There's a lot of variables, but very broadly, this is how it works. Like abstract selection, paper presentation, and then you'll turn your first draft, review, and then publication happens.
Great. I think we've.
So yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I think do give it a shot. I think in my law school, sort of funda that I had in myself for myself is that don't give up, or don't not do it. Like, you have to give it a shot. Like, you try it out. If it'll work out, it'll work out. It won't work out, it won't work out. It can happen both ways, to be fair. I mean, there were a lot of things which didn't work out for me in law school, and I don't regret not trying them at least. So do give publications a shot. Do give publications a shot. They are maybe you'll find them interesting. Maybe you'll find them boring. I think we have a question from Snigdha.
Yeah. Good evening. So actually, I had two questions. Firstly, should it be like, if we are writing, should it be like we are reading and then writing simultaneously, or is it like reading a lot of articles and then making your synopsis and then moving forward with your own original idea? What is a better way of structuring it?
I hear you again. See, there's no one way to do it. I think this is very, very subjective. But again, the problem, I think I wouldn't call it a problem, but a tendency that happens if you write your synopsis simultaneously while reading something is that you tend to mirror what the original author has said. So if you can, if you can consciously, work against this tendency of the human mind, I think you can definitely do it simultaneously. But what I would personally do is basically make pointers from each important article that I'm reading at the research stage, and then see how these pointers can, come together for my final synopsis. DVS, if you have a...
Yeah, I think that's fair. Even I would do the same, because I mean, to begin with, forget everything. To begin with, for you to be able to come up with an idea, you should know, right? You should know. Say you say that there's a publication on a topic on say ChatGPT, whatever it is that's going on these days, right? For me to write an article on how, let's say, ChatGPT will change the landscape of arbitrations in India in the next 10 years, I need to know so much about ChatGPT first. Or maybe this may have gotten a little too technical, but let's say I need to know what arbitrations are to begin with, right? So say at the first year level or at the second year level, we probably don't know as much about arbitrations or the ADR and so on and so forth. You sort of need to be aware of all of these concepts. So at a conceptual level, if you have a clarity in your mind, only then can you translate it into an idea, and then which evolves into an idea, and then which can translate into sort of, say, a publication. So I would put reading first. It's you need to know about what you're thinking, so only then can you think and come up with ideas which can help you in publication.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So does anyone have any other question? I think no one has. So I will invite Raghav sir to just give the vote of thanks for this meeting and tell us how well it was, like how you people discussed everything that we had. So Raghav sir.
All right. So first of all, my heartfelt gratitude to both Yashaschandra and Sushmit. You have been really kind. That too. You first of all, I know how it is when you work in an organization. I've been working for like 10 years, and when I'm asked to be invited on a weekend, so there is always a thought process which goes on, that I've already been working 6 days, say 5 days, and this time I could have done anything else. So if I put that effort somewhere, that means you believe in that, you have passion for that, and that is why you people are here. And the fact that Yashaschandra just said that this session was meant to be for 1 hour, but it went more than 1 hour, maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, that speaks, that reciprocates your passion into action, and this is why we are here actually. So as you already know, this is a pro bono initiative. We have already been working towards guiding students, professionals, and our work with however we are doing that, it has been reciprocated into results. Now we have taken a step for law students, and the fact that you people are able to associate with us and are able to guide students, not only in regard to theoretical aspect, but also the practical aspect. I could see the examples that both DVS and Sushmit were giving here. All those examples, even I could relate it. I graduated way back in 2012, but I could relate when Sushmit said that, you had to come up with an idea that had to be a new idea. And when Yashaschandra said that it has to be different, what are you adding to the existing jurisprudence? The first paper that I published, it was on a copyright law. And that copyright law, I did an internship. I wanted to add one more thing, that apart from moot courts, apart from other competitions that you people are participating, even if there is, you people are going for internship, the students who are here, sometimes you are assigned with a job that, write a research note on this topic. So rather, that was the assignment that I was given at that point of time, that I had to write an note on the copyright, on the right of a photographer under Copyright Act. I wrote a note. I did not even cite a single authority because there were none at that point of time, and it got published. Why? Because I was able to articulate that idea. So this practical aspect which was given in this session, I know for a fact that it will be useful for all the participants who are here. So on behalf of the whole team of the mentorship project, Yashaschandra and Sushmit, we thank you. And we thank you that you were able to devote this time on a weekend again, because I know how precious it is. And we want that you people should be associated with us in future as well. So if somebody is able to reach out to us even after this session and say that I want to talk to Sushmit sir, I want to reach out to Yashaschandra sir, then we will ping you again, because now I know that you are passionate about this thing. So again, on behalf of the whole team of the mentorship project, thank you so much. And to all the other participants, it was not these 80 odd participants which were joining the meeting, which had joined this meeting. Apart from this session is going to be useful for the other people as well, because there were, as I already told, there were 400 registrations in 2 days for this particular session. So we are going to upload it on our YouTube channel. And anyway, it is going to translate into action, and a lot of people would be able to publish their papers with the help that they have received from this session. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.